Pharaoh lies in his grand chamber, sleeping on an ornately decorated bed, golden torchlight flickering against hieroglyph-covered walls. Outside, the night sky is filled with stars, and a vision came to him in the night. Pharaoh sees himself standing on the banks of the Nile River. The water glistens under the morning sun, and the reeds sway gently in the breeze. But something was coming. Pharaoh's eyes widen as 7 fat, healthy cows emerge from the river, their skin smooth and glowing under the sun. 7 cows, strong and well-fed, rose from the water, a vision of prosperity. Suddenly, 7 gaunt, sickly cows appear from the shadows, their ribs protruding, their eyes hollow. They walk toward the healthy cows. Pharaoh gasps as the sickly cows devour the healthy cows whole, their mouths stretching unnaturally wide. And to his horror, the sick devoured the strong, yet remained as empty as before. Pharaoh jolts awake, sweat glistening on his brow. He grips his sheets tightly, his chest rising and falling in panic. The next morning, Pharaoh sits on his golden throne, looking troubled as he tells his dream to the court magicians and wise men. But no man in Egypt could explain its meaning. The magicians glance at each other nervously, their expressions uncertain as they fail to provide an answer. Even the wisest in Pharaoh's court stood silent. The cupbearer, standing at the side, suddenly remembers Joseph, his eyes widening as realization dawns.
Pharaoh, I have remembered my sin. There is a man in the prison, a Hebrew, who can interpret dreams.
And at last, the cupbearer remembered the one who could interpret dreams. Pharaoh gestures to his guards, giving the order to summon Joseph from the prison. And so, the prisoner was called to stand before the king. Egyptian guards descend into the dark prison, opening the heavy iron gate where Joseph sits. From the darkness of the prison, a call came that would change his fate forever. Servant hands Joseph fresh white linen garments. He looks down at them for a moment, his expression unreadable before he slowly changes. Stripped of his prison rags, he dressed not as a captive, but as a man about to stand before a king. Joseph is led through the grand halls of Pharaoh's palace, golden pillars and intricate hieroglyphs towering over him. A prisoner walked where only nobles tread, led into the heart of Egypt's power. And before the mightiest ruler in the land, Joseph stood. Pharaoh, seated on his golden throne, gestures for Joseph to approach as the court watches in silence. Pharaoh leans forward, his sharp, coal-lined eyes scanning Joseph, searching for something more than a mere prisoner. Could this man, once forgotten in chains, hold the answer to Egypt's fate? Joseph walks forward, now standing before Pharaoh, who watches him with a mixture of skepticism and curiosity. The royal court, noblemen, priests, and advisors, observe silently, some doubtful, others intrigued. A prisoner stood before the greatest ruler of the land, yet he did not tremble.
I have heard you can interpret dreams. Can you?
I cannot. But God will give Pharaoh the answer he seeks.
And so Pharaoh spoke, describing the visions that had robbed him of peace.
In my dream, I stood by the Nile. 7 fat cows came up from the river, strong and healthy, grazing among the reeds.
Pharaoh's face darkens as he recounts the second part of the dream. His brows furrow, his tone becomes tense.
Then, 7 gaunt and sickly cows emerged from the Nile. Their ribs stuck out, their eyes hollow. And they devoured the fat cows, yet remained as thin as before.
Joseph listens intently, nodding slightly. His deep brown eyes hold no fear, only certainty. He exhales slowly before speaking.
Pharaoh, God has shown you what he is about to do.
Where others saw mystery, he saw truth. The dream was not a riddle, but a warning. Joseph takes a slow step forward, his voice steady and clear as he explains.
The 7 fat cows represent 7 years of abundance. Egypt will see great harvests, and the land will flourish.
But fortune does not last forever.
Then famine will come. 7 years of suffering. The land will wither as if the abundance never existed, and the people will cry out for food.
The meaning of the dream was clear, but the future of Egypt was still uncertain.
If famine is coming, then tell me, Hebrew, what must we do?
A lesser man would have hesitated. But Joseph had been prepared for this moment his whole life.
Pharaoh must act quickly. Find a wise and discerning man to oversee Egypt. During the 7 years of plenty, store 1/5 of the harvest in great granaries. So when famine comes, the people will not perish.
The plan was bold. efficient. No one, magician nor priest, had offered Pharaoh such clarity before. Among all the wise men of Egypt, none could explain the dreams. But this Hebrew, he had spoken with the voice of the divine. Pharaoh suddenly stands from his throne, his voice echoing through the grand hall. The noblemen straighten, their whispers silenced.
Can we find such a man as this, in whom is the Spirit of God?
The noblemen exchange astonished glances. Some priests murmur among themselves, others nod slowly, realizing Pharaoh's words hold undeniable truth. Joseph stands humbly, waiting for the final decree. And in the presence of his court, Pharaoh spoke words that would change history.
Since God has shown you all this, there is no one as wise and discerning as you.
Pharaoh descends from his throne, approaching Joseph. He looks into Joseph's eyes, not as a ruler to a servant, but as a man recognizing divine wisdom. Pharaoh stands, raising his golden scepter. The court falls silent, eyes wide, as they realize what is happening.
Joseph, you shall be over my house, and all my people shall obey your word. Only in throne will I be greater than you.
The prisoner would leave this place, not in chains, but in robes of power. Pharaoh removes his golden signet ring and slides it onto Joseph's finger. The ring, a symbol of absolute power, glistens in the firelight. In one moment, a prisoner became the most powerful man in Egypt. Servants drape royal robes over Joseph's shoulders, white linen embroidered with gold and lapis lazuli, marking his transformation into Egypt's ruler. Joseph stands on a golden chariot, now wearing a royal Egyptian headdress, as Pharaoh's guards escort him through the city. The people bow as he passes. He had entered Egypt a slave. He now rode as a ruler. Joseph, standing on the palace balcony, looks over the fields of Egypt, where preparations for the coming famine will soon begin. His journey was not over. His mission had just begun.